It is a playoff edition of the Friday Football Show with myself and Mike DeCourcy. Tim Benz, along with you, brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Meet me at Mike's at the base of the Clemente Bridge across from PNC Park. They've got 80 rotating taps. They've got 500 available craft beers. They got steak and a stone. Go there before the playoff game. Go there for all the playoff games on Saturday and Sunday. College basketball as well. Penguins hockey. It's a busy weekend. Spend it at Mike's. Meet me at Mike's. Speaking of college basketball, Mike, that is one of your areas of expertise, along with football, of course. For the sporting news, you're right. TV, you do Big Ten, Fox, tons of writing for the sporting news as well about college basketball. I went against my instinct. I was thinking about just being clad in orange and blue as Syracuse is in town to play Pitt tomorrow. And now I get to go because the NFL has eschewed the Texans being in their normal 4 p.m. Saturday slot for the playoffs because they're playing the Steelers and they just put them on Monday Night Football, which, who knows? Hey, let's think of it. Big picture, 30,000-foot state of the Steelers heading into game day, Mike. Lots of push and pull when it comes to trends in this game, right?
Yes.
You got Monday Night Football where the Steelers never lose at home, haven't done so since 1991. You got the Houston Texans who never win on the road in the playoffs. They're 0-6 in that regard. But you've also got the Steelers who have now not won a playoff game for 8 years and have lost 5 playoff games in a row. So let's start there. What gives on Monday Night Football for the playoffs?
Well, for me, the thing that I looked at when I was in my 30,000-foot vehicle was the health of the team. So many of these playoff problems that they have faced, really since 2010, have been injury related. That you look at last year, okay, they probably were physically whole, but that schedule and how they responded to the schedule to Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City in 11 days broke them. They were just shattered by the time they got to Baltimore. But physically, prior to that, 2020, no Devin Bush, no Bud Dupree. That defense was elite, at least for that season. I mean, they weren't like all-time great, but they were one of the best defenses that season. You lose 2 starting linebackers, you were broken. You go back to 17 when the last time they were genuinely a great team and should have won a playoff game or two. Ryan Shazier and his absence was immense. And then like every year they failed before that. 16, 15, 14. You got Lev Bell not finishing the decisive game. He played like 1 quarter of the New England game in 16. Prior to that, didn't play in 15 or 14. And then, of course, in the 15 season, you also had AB missing after the hit in Cincinnati. So they're going in healthy this time. That doesn't guarantee that, because they're not as good as they were in the middle part of last decade. But it does guarantee that they can at least take their best shot.
I hear that, although I wrote about this last week, that, in any individual circumstance, in any individual season, you could look at one of those things and say that's an explanation for why they didn't win a playoff game. You put them all together, though, and it feels to me like 8 years of excuses. Like at some point, you got to be the Patriots and win a Super Bowl without Gronk. At some point, you got to be the Penguins and win a cup without Chris Letang. Or you don't have to do that. You could just win a playoff round or a playoff game if you're the Steelers. And they haven't done that. So I hear you, Mike. I get it. You're right. Those have always been injury-related explanations for why the Steelers have not won a playoff game. But if you have explanations 8 years in a row, it ends up coming off like one big pack of excuses.
Well, I understand that. I just think that when you have players that are that pivotal, you're not losing.
No, they're not small pieces.
These are
star
like
linebackers.
Small.
Yes,
your best linebacker that a guy who was supposed to define your defense for another half decade minimum, and then 2 guys who were absolute superstars at their positions when they were playing. Obviously, they had other concerns in terms of being successful teammates and such. but when they were playing, they were game changers. And when they weren't playing, they were game changers. There's no doubt that not having, think about how well they played in Denver in the 15 playoffs. Without the two of them, they were able to get to the point where Fitz-Toussaint's fumble kind of gave the game away, and maybe they shouldn't have been in that position, but they were able to be successful for a lot of that game without him. You're maybe not even in that situation if the two of them both had been available to play, or even D'Angelo Williams, who took over for Lev that year in the 2015 season when he got hurt. D'Angelo came in and was great, and then he got hurt.
Yeah, well, that's the irony. I think the year that we're all talking about were the most banged up, they actually won a playoff game and should have won another one. So it's funny how that goes. But I'm going to go with how I feel in terms of level of optimism for this game as opposed to the recent years. Like, that was my big picture thinking coming into this contest as opposed to other playoff games that they've had during this dry spell where they haven't won, but they've at least gotten there. Like this one, as opposed to Mason Rudolph going into a blizzard in Buffalo, or Ben Roethlisberger beyond the E and empty going up against Kansas City. What am I forgetting about? Last year's they wheezed their way in to get beaten by Baltimore again. Like, I don't have to squint to see them winning this game. I had to squint. I had to use a telescope to see them winning those other three games.
Right.
You know, the COVID game, not so much. They were the heavy favorites against Jacksonville. That's not in the same ballpark. But this one I can look at and say, all right, even though I'm picking Houston, even though I think they're worthy favorites as a field goal favorite, you know, they're a field goal underdog at home. They've won 4 of 5. I can see them winning this. You know, I don't have to manufacture the optimism for this. I just gave you the numbers. Monday Night Football, they never lose. Houston, on the road in the playoffs, they never win. It's Pittsburgh in the wintertime, although it's springtime apparently out there. We're going to have tornadoes and whatever is going to happen outside before this live stream is over. It's 60 degrees, but, you know, it could be in the 40s again, and they're a dome team, and it's like 1-in-14 all time for dome teams under 40 degrees in the NFL playoffs, or some goofy stat like that out there. So you don't have to come up with pretzel logic or twist yourself into a knot trying to come up with the reasons why they can win this game. Houston is not great offensively. Don't have much of a run game. If you were to do, and I'll get to this a little bit more, but kind of break down the matchups, offense versus defense, defense versus offense, you could easily say the defense should win both sides of the ball. And if you say that, well, then it comes down to potentially your ace kicker against their ace kicker. So, right. You know, I don't have to do some sort of string theory to come up with a notion as to why they're going to win this game. Whereas I think people tried to do that going into Kansas City and looked foolish as a result. Tried to do that last year going into Baltimore and looked foolish as a result. And certainly did that when they were hoping that they could get one more magical run out of Mason through, you know, the planet Hoth up in Buffalo when they played there a couple years ago.
I totally agree with you. It's a better circumstance for the Steelers, and part of that comes from playing at home. I am not an advocate for a 10-7 team playing at home against an 11-6 team.
12-5.
12-5. It should be by the record and not by the division championship. But man, there are people. I've written that column in the past. I didn't bother with it this week, and it's not because I've followed the Steelers for 50 years. It just felt like I didn't need to write it again. But it's not the way to do it, but it's the way they do it. And it's always shocking to me when I've written it. I think I've written it twice and put it out there on Twitter. And there's amazing to me how many people who are just fans who really believe in that. Like that's doctrine to them, that you win a division, even if you're 8-9 Carolina, you win a division, you should be at home in the playoffs. To me, it should be like, for instance,
how do you feel about it in other sports? How do you feel about it in the NBA, the NHL, and Major League
NBA
Baseball?
doesn't do that now. They changed their format so that it doesn't happen.
Wait, so the second seed doesn't go to the other division winner?
They do not I do not believe. I believe they go straight 1 to 10 because of the play-in thing.
Right.
But I believe they go straight 1 to 10. I've always believed. Well, I don't like the NHL playoffs because I don't like you being stuck in your division until you get out. You know what I mean? Unless you're the last wild card team and all that. I just think the conferences should be mixed and matched. But I think it's the same in college football a year ago, where we had the highest ranked conference champions were seeded 3 and 4, even though they were way down in the seed list. I'm not buying that. As in the NCAA tournament, you're seeded 1 to 16, whether you have a conference championship or not. I'm not in favor of this format, but it obviously this time around, as opposed to 2011, when they had to go to Denver and blew the game up there. That's one where I really feel like it's fair to say they blew it on multiple levels, multiple circumstances. They blew the Denver game. I don't think it would have mattered much the following week because they were so wrecked by injuries, but they should have won that game. They should have had Denver buried long before Tim Tebow became a factor on the overtime pass.
Well, you know what, Mike? I mean, I hear your point, but even if they go to 18 games, you're going to play 6 games in division. That means at least a third of the games are going to be within divisional play. So the NFL is setting it up that being a division champ means something.
Yeah, but
hold on.
Why is go ahead.
What I was going to say to that point is, like, for instance, hold on, I'm bringing up. So it's the same thing with the Rams. They're coming in with 12 wins. They're going to an 8-9 Carolina team in a 5-4 game. So it's even more disparative than it is with the Steelers and the Texans. And yeah, you do get that sometimes where the last division champ is under 500 or 9-8, something like that. And you get a really good team with a really good record. That's the wild card. But so if you're 4 wins better than the team that is playing at home, and you have, like the case of both of these teams, the Texans and the Rams, if you have 12 wins, then that means you have at least 4, 5 on the road. Like, it shouldn't be that big of a deal that it's the only thing that's preventing you from winning. It's going to be other things besides just going on the road that causes you to lose.
Well, no, but why have you not earned the preferential treatment? If there's preferential treatment to be had, and there is, because you get to have your fans on your side and they can make too much noise and you got to go to silent count and all that, why have you not earned the preferential treatment by winning more games? Does the division championship mean something? Yes. Carolina is in a playoff that they would not be in were it not for this rule that says division champion gets in. Why it then has to go another step and also get a home game, I don't buy that.
Well, you know why? I mean, the practical reason, we all know the practical reason. The practical reason is it's another layer of competition for weeks 17 and 18. Like, it's another layer that you could potentially be playing for something.
Well, but it would have been the same last week. Detroit would.
Well, it could be, but there could also be weeks. This is secular. It changes year to year. But you might find yourself in a season where both teams are 11-5 going into game 17, and the winner gets to be the division champ, and the loser becomes a wild card. Like, they're both in, but they're playing each other for the division title. So, like, that's what the NFL wants, so they could have meaningful games at the end of the season.
But that still would be a meaningful game, because even if they were both getting in, the winner in that division would get the home game. But what I'm saying,
that's what I'm saying. But like, if you're saying that
it's your own division, you're going to finish with a better record than them as a result.
No, but I'm saying if you're the 4 versus, like, you could be the 3 versus the 5. Like, if you're playing for a 12-win division championship and you got Carolina sitting there as an 8-9 team,
right? You
win that game at the end of the season in the NFC West. It's what happened with San Francisco, right? That happened this year with San Francisco and Seattle. That's why it was important, because otherwise we'd have 3 games being hosted by NFC West teams, right?
We would.
So, like, that's why that's the practical reason why they do it.
Yeah, I think it's a stretch to the competition, and I think there still would be meaningful games. Like I said, I mean, Detroit, which was effectively eliminated, probably would have still had a pulse last week. I'd have to go back and do the math and all that. Don't know for sure, but there might have been room for them. I think there still would have been meaningful games if you use this season as a microcosm if that rule were changed. I mean, obviously,
you wouldn't even put a division champion in at all then.
No, I would put the division champion automatically. That's what it conveys for me. Automatic entry, as is the case in the NCAA basketball tournament. You could be 11-17. Shout out to the Lehigh team of 1985, I think it was. You could be 11-17, but you win the Patriot League and you get in. You could be 8-9, but you win the NFC South and you get in, but you just don't have to host a home game.
All right, that is our 30,000-foot big picture view state of the Steelers heading into game day for Wild Card Weekend. Steelers and Texans coming up on Monday Night Football. Let's get to our keys to victory next. Offensive key, defensive key, and then we throw in a bonus key as well. I'll start offensively, Mike, and I'll start with the passing game offensively, third down specifically. Remember what you did on third down last week against the Ravens. Don't always go short of the sticks. It was sitting right there for you, and at least at some points, they were smart enough to take it. They went beyond the sticks on the 31-yard pass to Freiermuth. They went beyond the sticks in the air to Austin on the touchdown play. They went beyond the sticks in the air, barely, but beyond the sticks in the air to Marquez Valdez-Scantling on 3rd and 10. It went 11 yards in the air. He caught it. He fell backwards. He got 13. But at least they pushed the ball down the field beyond the sticks. And part of the reason, beyond just the logistics of it's a lot harder on yourself to throw it beyond the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 3, gain 2 yards, and still come up short on a third down. Like, it's hard for my brain to process that sometimes, but they do it at least once a game.
Yes.
They complete a pass on 3rd and short, and they don't get the first down, which is mind-boggling, but they do it all the time because the backs are catching the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and then it turns into basically trying to convert a 5-yard run. And it's not easy to do, especially when the defense knows what your tendencies are, and they're looking for it. And it's going to be even harder to do this week because now you got linebackers that can go sideline to sideline. They're good at taking away the flat game. Adam Thielen even kind of spoke to that a little bit yesterday when he talked about how good their defense is. They're going to have to be a little bit more old school and conventional. The ball goes in the air beyond the chains, even if they got a good secondary. And they do, but it's not going to be as easy for you to turn around, dump it in the flat, and hope that Warren and Gainwell can take a 3-yard pass, quote unquote, 6 yards for the first down. Right. That's not easy to do against the swarming Texans defense. You're just going to have faith that Rodgers can get the ball beyond the sticks and the wide receivers can get open occasionally against this good secondary.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could see DK Metcalf get open regularly because he gets open regularly against some of the best, depending on whether or not they overload to his side. And if they do, you have to be ready for that. But I look at this in a very similar light. I think that if you're going to use those flat passes, use them on early downs when the first down, when maybe they're not expecting you to necessarily pass the ball. Those are effective plays. They're some of my favorite plays now in the Steelers attack because Gainwell and Warren are so good with them. But you don't want them on 3rd and 5 trying to convert like that. You want it to be on 2nd and 7 or maybe even 1st and 10 or maybe 2nd. And one of the things that I like least about the Arthur Smith offense is the 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3 run play. That play has to average almost no yards in their season. I've not gone through and charted it, but how many times have you seen them break that run, the 2nd and 4 run?
Well, you know what, Mike? Like, it even bothers me, like, to tie our 2 points together here. They had the 1st and goal run to Gainwell at the end of the first half last week against Baltimore, where they pitched it backwards to go 3 feet forwards. It's like, what are you doing here? And I think you're right about that too, because your point is similar to mine, is that everybody's aware of the tendency. It happens way too often, and it's ineffective too often.
Yeah, so that's a big part, I think, as well, of maybe keeping the pressure off of Aaron Rodgers. To me, one of the things that I've noticed is that Obviously, when they played Cleveland and you had the concern about Garrett, they were not as effective in their passing game. And of course, it also involved DK being absent. But DK was absent against Baltimore, too, and they were much more successful because he didn't face a real pass rush. Well, you're facing the realest pass rush in the league this week. So you have to contain that. But he has to play with confidence and comfort as they contain it. He's going to go down a couple of times. That's going to happen. He's going to be under pressure a couple of times. He's going to have to cope, whether he escapes and runs, escapes and throws it away, escapes and finds somebody, whichever it is. But he has to play with the kind of confidence he showed against Baltimore, even though there's going to be some discomfort. You have to deal. You can't just be frustrated. And we saw him get frustrated in LA. We saw him get frustrated in Cleveland. He has to play with confidence. If he doesn't, none of this matters. Good Aaron Rodgers is a tremendous factor in what success the Steelers have had this year, and I'll reflect that later in the program with my key stat.
I want to let people know, if you're watching, you can comment as well what you think the keys to the game are. Will the Steelers win? Give us a score. Give us a prediction. Give us your logic going in. Give us your level of optimism. Just post your comments. We got a bunch in advance that we are going to share with you later on in the show before we get to our official predictions. My defensive key is a little less tactical, Mike, and it is more kind of thematic. And it is, if you are the historic defense that you were purported to be before the season, you don't have to be as good as the best defense in football, which is what Houston is, but you got to come close. Like, this is how Matt Williamson, my colleague on Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970, always breaks down games. Like, he always talks about the 4 units on the field and ranks them. To some degree or another, every week we have this conversation about the 4 units on the field. The Steelers offense, the Steelers defense, opponent offense, opponent defense. Rank them. Number 1 clearly this week is Houston's defense.
No doubt.
I would argue that despite all of their deficiencies and all the oxygen we've used on this show and every other format that we're on, bitching about the Steelers defense, they're actually number 2. I would say that's the second best unit. Would you agree with me on that?
I hadn't given it a lot of thought. But I think you can make a great case for that, especially when they're whole as they are now. TJ's back, Harmon's back.
Well, let's simplify. Let's simplify it. Like, if one of the 2 offenses is better than the Steelers defense in that 1 through 4 ranking, what is it?
Well, I would think it would probably be the Steelers offense.
Do you think it is? Because I actually have more faith in the Steelers defense this weekend than I do the Steelers offense.
Well, yeah, I do too, because they're facing remember, when you're ranking these 4, the 1 is up here and 2 is probably here. That's the difference. I think the Steelers defense at its best has been very good. What they did to Detroit, what they did to Baltimore in both games, their defense, even what they did for a lot of the game in Cleveland, although Cleveland's not as great a challenge on that side of the ball. I think at their best, they've been very good. They have been a little bit unreliable, and that's problematic in any win or go home situation. It was problematic on Sunday, and it could be problematic on Monday night.
I would probably go Houston defense, Pittsburgh defense, and then it's a coin flip. Yeah. And I want change back for my quarter. Like, I'm not wild about either offense here. So, like, probably Houston, then Pittsburgh, but you can not work hard and talk me into the other way and say the Steelers. But my overarching point on the defense is you don't have to be as good as Houston's, but you got to be good enough. You got to be close. And you should be better than Houston's offense. The Steelers defense should be better than Houston's offense. They don't have much of a run game. Their passing game is good. They're good players. C.J. Stroud's good quarterback. Nico Collins, a really good receiver. Right. I like the Iowa State triumvirate that they've got there as depth receivers and Kirk, and they use Schultz. They probably use Schultz better than the Steelers know how to use their tight ends,
no doubt.
Frankly.
Yeah.
So, like, there's enough to like there, but the Steelers can win that matchup. They can at least win that matchup, I would think, to the point that it could be 13-13 and maybe Boswell's kicking a potential game-winning field goal, or 16-16 and you get out of there 19-16, and that's enough.
Yes,
I would think. but they've just got to deliver, and they have been subpar against better offenses than this, but subpar, Blake Bortles made them look bad in the playoff game not too long ago. So, that's my point about the defense.
Well, to your point, Houston's a fairly conventional offense. I mean, they have good play design.
They're actually a fairly conventional defense too, but they're just really good at it on the other side of the ball.
But what the point I'm kind of trying to make is that the Steelers' biggest problems defensively this year have been against quarterbacks who were threats to either scramble for huge yards or succeed on design runs.
Right, because it takes their eyes away from the running back, and then the running back goes nuts. Allen and Cook is the biggest example.
Yeah, obviously Josh Allen, Justin Herbert to an extent, Lamar, and even going all the way back to Justin Fields when they had to scrape to beat
Hall and Fields, exactly, yes.
The worst team in the league. So they don't have to worry about that this week. They can play defense. They don't have to be worried. It's not that C.J. Stroud can't convert a first down if he's not contained and he sees an opening. He's certainly a good enough athlete to do that. But it's not a feature of their offense. He rushed for 200 or so yards on the season. It's not a feature of their offense. They want to get the ball out quicker. It's not an element that they depend upon. So the Steelers can be bit more conventional as well. The plays that happened against Baltimore, the perfect example being the dual sack that became the zero sack and instead became a touchdown for Baltimore that was game changing. That's a very unlikely play to happen on Sunday. You're probably not going to see that. The Steelers would really have to screw that one up. I mean, a lot of people, when that play happened, were like, well, it's Lamar. He's going to do that. Well, if C.J. Stroud did that, you screwed up. So I think that they can feel a little bit more confident in the way they play defense, that they can be successful. And I think that's a huge element of why they can win on Monday night.
What's your bonus key?
Yeah, I would like to see them think through every aspect of the game better than they did in the Baltimore game. And I use first as an example, after Austin scored the touchdown, I think there were 55-ish seconds left on the clock when he scored. And at that point, because the extra point was missed, you're in jeopardy of losing if you give up probably more than one first down. And so to me, at that point, kick the ball out of the end zone, give it to him at the 35 and lock down. And instead, they're like, but we can get 8 more yards out of this and maybe a few seconds. So let's kick it in the zone and cover like we always do, except they didn't cover like they always do. And the guy winds up well past the 40-yard line. Boz practically saved the touchdown there. You see, he did miss the kick, but he kind of saved the touchdown. And that ball they should have thought through that. The game planning of that scenario was not good enough because the 7 seconds or so that you might get off the clock in that circumstance were not a big enough price to pay for the gamble that maybe you make a mistake this time. Remember, when the Steelers, who are very good on kickoff coverage, I'm not condemning that, but when they succeed, it's the 26, it's the 27. That's where they stop guys when they succeed. Rare occasions where the kicker fumbles, the kick returner fumbles the ball and you wind up stopping them at the 18 or whatever, but you're probably gaining 8 yards and losing 7 seconds. And it's not a big enough price to pay. They have to be smarter than that. As well as the play that Ben Skoranek made on the game-winning missed field goal. Look, Skoranek jumping, okay, do it. His jump was clean. It was not leverage, but then he put his hands down as he fell. And a lot of people on Twitter, et cetera, said, oh, they should have called leverage. Well, it wasn't leverage. But what if an official who wasn't paying close enough attention thought he saw leverage? You could have wiped out the play of the season for the Steelers. Again, if you want to jump like he jumped, and he jumped unaided, and if you just fall into the line at that point, no arms, they're not calling anything. But we have seen that call misapplied in multiple circumstances, including against the Ravens in the Steelers game the first time around, that helped the Steelers win the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, by no means can you afford to make mental errors like that. Again, it wasn't a penalty, and I'm not holding Skoranek liable for a penalty there, but it could have been one. Think about what can go wrong if you do what he did, and do the opposite.
I'm going to go with special teams as well here. I know you're not literally talking about special teams, but it manifested a lot in special teams. And that's where I'm going with my bonus key. And that is, your good kicker has to be better than their good kicker, and your good kicker needs to be good again. Now, I am not panicking to the level that a lot of people are with Boswell. I think some of this has gotten away from what really happened when we're talking about Boswell's struggles lately. I don't know if that extra point was really tipped or not. I know it was in the play-by-play sheet. I know the guy came close. The point is, he came close. There were two guys running right at his face because Harmon tried to block two guys at once and blocked neither, and they both got through. So that was more on the offensive line trying to block for Boswell than it was on Boswell. He missed a 54-yarder in Cleveland. Like, are we also spoiled with Boswell? We can't accept a 54-yard miss in Cleveland, where, by the way, he's usually not good anyway, and he kicked a 57-yarder to go along with the 54-yard miss. Yeah, he shanked one in Detroit. That's the one I don't have an explanation for, aside from every now and then you're allowed to shank one. And he also had a 59-yarder that day. So I don't panic at the sight of Boswell having 3 missed kicks in 3 weeks when 2 of them are easily explained away, one being 50-plus in Cleveland, one because he either was blocked or partially blocked on an extra point. And, oh, by the way, he saved your bacon. I still don't know how he made that kick in Cleveland when Waitman and Kuntz had sort of a bad snap-hold exchange, which we never saw clean on CBS. But whoever was at fault, it was not a clean exchange.
Right.
And he kicked it in anyway. So
yes,
I'm not panicking about Boswell. I am concerned that Fairbairn won't give you the usual come to Heinz Field / Acrisure Stadium in a playoff game and miss 3 field goals, Doug Bryan. Like, I don't think you're going to get that kind of from this guy. If you look at his track record so far this year, 91% of the season, 44-48. He hasn't, stop me if you've heard this before, he hasn't missed under 50, Mike. 9 of 13 from 50-plus with a long of 57. So he's a good kicker, too. It's just Boswell has to be himself and not lend oxygen to this flame about whether he's starting to, get late-stage Justin Tucker already. And I'm just talking about on the field. But,
yeah.
He's not regressing. Or he's not having a 2018 end like he had in 2018 when he really struggled, but maybe there were injuries there. But I don't know. We've got people commenting for our viewers out there, our listeners out there. If you're worried about Boz or if you're worried about another aspect of the game we didn't talk about, tell us what it is. But I'm not wrapped up in the Boswell narrative right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will be curious to see whether the Texans kicker, in looking at their game schedule, I see a lot of Jacksonville and New Orleans, and I think they played New Orleans. I know they played Tennessee. Not a lot of northern stuff in there. And when they did go north, of course, they were in Indy, so they were not playing in these conditions. So I don't know whether that will impact him or not. But Boz has played in that his entire career and has generally been successful, almost uniformly been successful.
Let's get to our On the Other Sideline. This is a theme to preview this week's game for the upcoming opponent, in this case, the Texans, on Wild Card Weekend, Monday Night Football. I used the word earlier, narratives. Let's bust up some narratives, all right? Because if you're the Texans, that's your point of view coming into this game, isn't it? Like, what are you besides just a defense? People say you're just a defense. If I'm a Texans fan, if I'm a Texans coach, if I'm a Texans player, I'm looking at it from that standpoint. We're not just a defense. Our kicker can kick. Our quarterback can throw. We got good wide receivers. We were an afterthought because we got off to a bad start, and it took a 9-game win streak just to remind people we were alive. All right? So, that would be my thinking. Can you actually win a road playoff game? Can the Steelers actually be beaten on Monday Night Football, and can we be the team to do it? Is Stroud up there with the other AFC quarterbacks that are sort of in this pantheon that's now starting to crumble a little bit because Mahomes is aging and wasn't there this year, and Jackson is going to be going through a coaching change. Like, is there room for CJ Stroud to climb up that ladder before Trevor Lawrence does, before Bo Nix does, before Drake May really puts a foot down after having a great regular season? To your point, Mike, can an inside team win on the road under 40 degrees if it's going to be under 40 degrees? Are we a 12-5 team that can change all these things, or are we just the Houston Texans? There's got to be a point where you go beyond, they're pretty good, you can count on them to be good, to making a run. Can we make a run?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One of the interesting thing about the Texans is that all but one of their losses came to a playoff level team, which is kind of a scary thing because it takes a playoff team to beat them. But what do you know? That's all that's left are playoff teams. And in the case of the AFC, all that's left are really successful playoff teams. We don't have any Carolinas in the AFC. So that's I think an important component for the Texans. Can they beat the high quality opposition? They have 3 playoff team victories in their 9-game winning streak, but only one in the final 6. And unlike the Steelers, who turned some potential playoff teams into non-playoff teams down the stretch, as they did with Baltimore, as they did with Detroit, there's not a lot of that in the Houston run. There's a lot of Indianapolis, which was shot by the time the Texans.
Well, I don't know about that, but go ahead. We'll get.
I mean, there's as I mentioned, there's a Tennessee in there. The Colts were shot by the time when Jones went down. The Colts were shot. They weren't going to make it after. Yeah,
that. But in their 9-game winning streak, if you look at it,
I'm talking about the final 6 now.
Oh, the final 6. All right, the final 6, because they did beat.
Yeah. Early, yes.
San Francisco, and then to start the winning streak, let's see here. They had Buffalo.
Yes.
Yeah, so they were 4-4 against playoff teams, and I thought there was Los Angeles, Buffalo, and maybe San Francisco was outside of the winning streak. My bad.
Down the stretch, you're talking about KC, which was toast, Indy toast, Arizona, which was awful, Vegas. So I was wrong about, and the Tennessee was in there as well. They were just before the Buffalo game. But when they went to, the only team that they played that was significant down the stretch was L.A., the Chargers, which they did a great job defensively. Obviously, they held them to 16 points and scored enough to win.
Oh, Jacksonville. I forgot about Jacksonville at the start of their win streak. That was the other one.
Exactly. Yeah. Jacksonville, Buffalo were the 2 big wins in the win streak that really made a statement. And the third playoff win was that one down the end. But it was a nice little surf home for them. The Arizona game, my goodness, Arizona couldn't be worse. Vegas was awful. And the Indy game didn't matter. And they pulled, by the time the Texans got through half, they knew they weren't going to change their seed or win the division. And so they pulled their starters and the game didn't matter. They ended up winning it, but it didn't really matter. So I think that's, to me, the question for them is to say we can, that this team as it stands now, we can beat the best teams. It's not just a team that coasted in.
Let's get to our stat pack, and I'm going to continue on that theme for my stat of the week. It's the playoff-related numbers that you just brought up, but I'll flip it to the Steelers side. They are 1-5 and minus 54. 1-5 against playoff teams, minus 54 point differential. I think that means something personally. Because like you said, Mike, I get it. They were a reason why some teams didn't make the playoffs. Well, If it was Baltimore, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But okay, Detroit's one. You could argue that they started the slide of Indianapolis. Maybe some teams mimicked that. Maybe it was the same thing that the Ravens did to the Steelers in the COVID year, where they were unbeaten going into week 9, and they had the Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. game or whatever the hell it was. Where they played like garbage against the Ravens. The Ravens finally told the rest of the world, hey, that's not Ben Roethlisberger back there anymore. That's the new Ben Roethlisberger. So just throw your hands up and bat the ball down when he tries to check it down over your heads. And then that's exactly what Washington did, and the slide began. Maybe that's what the Steelers did to the Colts, going back and looking at it upon further review. And then, Danny Dimes getting hurt didn't help things any. But still, the Steelers 1-5 against teams that made the playoffs, and they didn't look particularly good in a lot of those games.
Yeah, for me, the stat is 6-1. And that, to my surprise, I didn't realize this until I was looking for what would be a defining stat. That is the Steelers' record in games where Aaron Rodgers tops 220 passing yards. I think that tells me something. They need the air game to win this game. They need to be able to move the football through the air. A lot of the most frustrating games were the games where when he had the issues with the pass rush, when he had issues connecting, when they refused to throw the ball down the field and threw the ball behind the chains, and that play got busted up. They, as you mentioned earlier, they need to go downfield. They need to have confidence after what Austin did on Sunday night. I mean, it wasn't a tough catch, but he was able to cook that guy in the way that he did. You can blame the turf, but the double move was a factor. It's the reaction to the double move. Maybe he doesn't go down, and so maybe it's not a walk-in touchdown, but it's an open play. It's an open catch as long as the ball's on target. It was an easy play. It could have been a comfortable play because the move worked. DK being back, we haven't talked much about that, but what he brings to the offense is immeasurable. And again, if DK doesn't have his interaction in Detroit, I don't think last Sunday's game ever happens. I mean, it's played, but that doesn't play out with the drama that it did, because I think they go up to Cleveland and they beat the Browns, and maybe not easily, but comfortably. And that part of the game for the Steelers is obviously important. The turnovers, they don't lose when they don't turn over the ball. I think the final tally, was 7-1. When they don't, the Cleveland game, they didn't turn it over, and they didn't have any turnovers against Baltimore in the second game. So I believe the final tally was 7-1 when they don't turn it over. So that's a very important component. But this 6-1's pretty huge. I mean, they won 10 games, and 6 of them came with him throwing for more than 220.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple other quick numbers here. 0.3. Again, this comes from my buddy Matt Williamson on this one. 0.3, the amount of time Houston plays dime. They are a nickel 74% of the time. So when I said they're excellent but basic, that's what I mean. They are excellent but basic. They put the same guys out there almost all the time. They don't sub all that much. They just play it. You know what's coming, and then you have to try to move the ball against it. And most teams are very ineffective at doing so. And I'll give you one more. This one should be a little bit scary to the Steelers, especially with the way they've won some games recently. Plus 78. Houston's fourth quarter point differential is plus 78. We have seen the Steelers get in the situations in playoff games where they've had to come back, and you knew that they weren't, because you knew that if Kansas City needed points late, they were going to get them. Same thing with Buffalo. You knew that if they made a push against Baltimore last year, they'd just run the ball and grind it out on the ground, and you'd be screwed. This game, you can't get behind early because I don't think you're going to be able to catch up late.
Right.
So they need a better start, because the fourth quarter, or maybe the second half in general, might be a desert point-wise, especially if you are in, hey, Aaron's got a throw mode, and Hunter and Anderson can pin their ears back and really attack.
I can spin this stat a little bit in the Steelers' favor, and here's how. Think about some of the Steelers' best performances. The Minnesota game, the Vikings game up in Ireland, the Baltimore 1 game, even the Baltimore 2 game, the Detroit game. All games in which they allowed significant scoring that didn't change the outcome in the fourth quarter. They allowed multiple scoring plays to Baltimore just 5 days ago. They absolutely dominated the fourth quarter, the Ravens did, but the Steelers were able to counter, and they had a lead to begin with. Minnesota, the Dublin game, they were way ahead. They backed off. They probably backed off a little bit too much. The Miami game, they backed off a little bit too much, allowed Miami to score a little more quickly than they wanted. They countered it, so it didn't matter. But all those games, they were giving up points in the fourth quarter that were relatively inconsequential. This team doesn't often blow significant leads. I mean, they've given up a halftime lead like they did against Buffalo, but they gave that up on the first play of the second half. So when they've done a good job of managing the leads in late games, Houston could win the fourth quarter again, but the Steelers could still win the game if they are effective, efficient, and dynamic in the first three quarters. I'll give you one more before we book to who will take flight, and that is plus 17, Houston's turnover differential, plus 12, Steelers turnover differential. Both teams are exceptional in that area of the game, so neither team can really afford to have a off game in that sense. And I think in that sense, it's really more on the offense. Don't give up the ball to a team that is really capable of taking it from you on either side.
Let's go to who will take flight. That's where we talk about flight night at Mike's. No Monday Night Football, obviously, this week, aside from the Steelers. It's not going to be one of those dippy two-game things. It's a standalone playoff, just the Steelers, just the Texans. You can go there at Mike's across the street from the PNC Park entrance to the outfield, base of the Clemente Bridge. Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore, and they have flight night. But I don't know if they'll do flight night for this Monday. I'm pretty sure they don't do flight night for Monday Night Football because that gets you in the weeds a little bit. So you're just going to have to drink straight draft and like it. And you will like it at Mike's. I'm going to go with it. We picked somebody from each team who we think is really going to emerge and shine. And I'm going to go with the number two corners. If Lassiter is healthy and he says he's going to play, and Pierre for the Steelers, it's going to be a war to see Stingley on DK, although I should be careful about saying this because I don't know how much those two really travel. They kind of go left-right because they trust them both on both sides. So it might be interesting to see how the Steelers try to match that up. But let's just say for the sake of argument that if DK is having his way with Lassiter and they want to put Stingley on him, I like Lassiter's matchup against whoever else he gets, Austin or whoever the Steelers deem to be their number two for this weekend. And for Pierre, I think he can handle whoever's after Nico Collins, whether it's Higgins or whichever one of the Iowa State guys that they deem to be number two in their game plan. I think it's after that where it gets fascinating, Mike. You go down the passing tree. It's like, who's the next guy that's going to emerge? And that's where potentially Houston's depth is better than Pittsburgh's.
Right. For me, I'm going to go Troy Faltanu. He's been kind of a darling of Brian Baldiger's breakdowns on the offensive line tape. We've seen him singled out. Baldy is an old friend and tremendous football analyst for Fox and others, and he's done a lot about Troy, about how good he's been, and obviously had that huge block on the Gainwell touchdown run in the Ravens game. But this time he's going to face probably both Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter. They tend to flip-flop depending on what they want to do on a given play. So he'll probably face both of them, not at the same time, thankfully, but he's got to have a big night. And for Houston, I went a little outside the box here. I think the Steelers' goal is to make Tommy Townsend even busier than he usually is. Tommy Townsend's one of the busiest punters in the NFL. He's punted 10 more times than Corliss Waitman has. You think the Steelers offense doesn't get going enough, but Townsend's punted 72 times, Waitman only 62. I think the Steelers maybe would like to get Townsend out there as much as possible. You can get this Texans offense off the field if you do your job.
I'm going to go around the league now, Mike, and we got to get caught up here. I know you want to talk about Harbaugh a little bit, and talk about coaching situations. So with that being said, I'll let you go in that direction. I'll give you what I think is the strangest line on the board this weekend, and that's Philadelphia and San Francisco. I don't know that Philly's going to win this game. I know if you're giving me a 5.5-point start with San Francisco, I'm taking San Francisco. I think that's a weird line. And then I feel oddly confident about Chicago. I've been mid on Chicago all year. I've never really sunk my teeth into them, but I feel oddly confident about 1.5 against Green Bay. So I'm going to go with those two NFC games. You want to talk about coaching vacancies and Harbaugh a little bit here?
Yeah, I think that Harbaugh's absence now has completely changed the picture of
it has.
AFC North football. We don't know what they've changed it to. It might be a tremendous hire. I don't know exactly what direction they will go. This is not Ozzie Newsome's Ravens. Hasn't been proven to be at that level yet. Just as the Steelers situation has changed, and Omar Khan has replaced has replaced the GM position and made it a different type of organization to an extent in terms of personnel acquisition. Baltimore still has to show that their new GM structure can shine. And I think that letting go of Harbaugh was kind of the last gasp of the old Ravens regime. And, obviously Lamar is still there and all of that, but it was a different organization when it was Harbaugh and Newsom than it has been the last couple of years. And so we'll see what they do, what approach they take. Look, the young genius, that approach has had its successes, but none as big as the one that created that template, Sean McVay. His progeny, so to speak, have not been nearly as successful as everybody's chased that direction. Mike McDaniel just got let go, at the latest one of that grouping to get let go. So I'll be very interested. But if you're the other teams in the league that have openings now, how much do you want John Harbaugh? I think that's an interesting element. I know he's got a lot of interest, but somebody's got to say, yeah, that's the direction I want to go. The guy who's won almost 200 games.
Mike, I want to throw this at you. I put a poll up after Harbaugh was let go. I said, after 18 seasons of coaching the Steelers' biggest rival, John Harbaugh out as Ravens head coach, as Steelers fans, how will you remember him? I gave 4 options because that's all you can give on a Twitter poll. Liked and respected him was 1. Couldn't stand him was 2. Annoying was 3. And 4 was, I liked Billick even less. So here's how it broke down. 50% of people said liked and respected him, which I don't know if I believe you on that, but okay. And then the other 50% was always annoying at 26. I liked Billick even less at 12 and couldn't stand him at 10.5. Methinks some people voted because they wanted to see themselves look good in response.
But I think it may have been because of how you framed it. Because if you said respected but was annoyed by him, I think you would have got about 89% on that.
Well, I don't know. I think there were some people that didn't respect him, but go ahead.
I think the thing about John, I told my wife that I will miss is in those games when the Steelers and Ravens were really competitive and a call went against the Ravens, the disgust on his face, the cameras always caught. They don't even go to Mike when there's a call that goes against him because they're not going to get that look. But they got it every time from John. I think that's what will be missed most in the Steelers-Ravens.
No, what they got from Tom was, is that me on the Jumbotron on the field? Is that me? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
All right, let's get to some comments here, Mike, before we get to our predictions. Speaking of picks, this guy at the bottom says Buffalo. He's picking the Bills, which we didn't talk about, but I find that to be the most intriguing game of the weekend because it's the old guard of AFC quarterbacks. The path is cleared for him and Allen. Lawrence has kind of been on the fringe there. They're the home team. How does this go? I don't have a great feel for this game. I think I'm going Buffalo. I think they're going to – I don't know if they're going to win the whole thing, but I think they win this week, but I'm not even guaranteeing they win this week.
Yeah, Jacksonville's been really good. I will confess that because of time conflicts and the way the games – I haven't seen a lot of Jacksonville lately. I haven't seen their resurgence. I saw them early when they weren't very good, but I've just seen the scores, and the scores have been impressive. So I agree. It's one of the games that I'll most look forward to this weekend.
Pete says, my keys, score one more point than the other team. Okay, now I know you're being facetious there, but if you look at what happened against Baltimore, that's kind of what it was. Detroit, kind of what it was. And if you want to use that overly simplistic premise to make a bigger point about the Steelers' approach this game, like one thing that drove me crazy, Mike, is you are Mike Tomlin. That is John Harbaugh on the other side of the line of scrimmage. You have coached against each other for 18 years. We've all seen this movie twice a year. You know, it's like watching Christmas Vacation on July 25th and December 25th. You watch it twice a year, right? Christmas and July. You'd pick this game to decide to be a riverboat gambler and go for it because Pat Freiermuth happened to get a flag. Like, Take the points. It's Ravens Steelers.
Yes.
Take the points. You got bullied into that by the crowd. You got bullied into that by fourth down mania. Take the points. And like this guy is saying, I know he's joking, but be 1 point better. Well, if Luke makes the kick, they would have been 1 point worse because they left 3 on the field. And that's a problem, I think, that's seeping into every coach's head. And even Tomlin, who's incredibly conservative in that regard, has caught the illness.
Yeah, that was a poor decision. They did it. They tried to convert a fourth down earlier in the game, and against all logic, tried to convert a tush push from what was almost a 2-yard situation. It was at least 1.5 yards. You do that for less than 1 yard, not for more than 1 yard. So they made some really puzzling decisions on Sunday night that we all forgot about because they did play some really good football, and they got the great break of the missed kick and won the division. But they made some really puzzling decisions. That goes back to my think. Those are other examples of plays I could have cited about thinking through your decision-making in a game this consequential.
Let's get to one or two more quickly here. Sorasaur says he doesn't like the fact that the Steelers are underdogs because he says, do the Steelers ever lose Monday Night Football games? No, they don't. They also haven't won a playoff game in 8 years. And I think that's where the odds makers are going with this. I went through the trends to start the show. There's a lot of push-pull on these. And I think another reason is while they don't lose Monday night games, the Texans haven't lost in 9 weeks themselves. So I pick the Steelers. I'm not going to tell you that's dumb. You want to throw money on the Steelers. I'm not going to tell you to put it back in your pocket. I hear all the points, but to act like it's not a worthy line to have the Texans be a field goal favorite is sort of, I don't know. That's Pollyanna-ish to me. I mean, I think you're looking to be offended there if you think that the Steelers are not worthy of being at least a 3-point underdog.
You take comfort from where you want, but the Steelers have, to my knowledge, not ever played a Monday Night Football playoff game. Not that I'm aware of. There may have been one in there.
Wait, what was the Bills? Was that like a Monday afternoon?
Well, that was not a scheduled Monday night game, and it certainly wasn't
it was on the road too.
Yeah, it was not it was not a true Monday night. It might have been played on a Monday, but it was scheduled for Sunday and it was played in the afternoon.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was not a true Monday night game. I don't know that they've ever had one. So I'm not, like I said, take comfort if it makes you feel better for the weekend. Great. But what's going to happen on Monday night's not going to have anything to do with that.
And let's get to one more last one here, Chris. Let's go ahead to the guy who wants to change the song for Renegade, because this is an interesting suggestion that he puts up there. The guy said that he wanted Grand Illusion, which is kind of funny. Maybe not Styx's best effort, but kind of funny. The bigger deal that I've got with changing Renegade is how about changing the personnel after they play Renegade? Like, you play Renegade, and I'm looking up at the Jumbotron watching Renegade. And they do, because it's Ravens Steelers, they got Palomalu's interception, and they got Palomalu stripping the ball from Flacco, and they got Harrison making a sack, and they got Porter making a sack. I'm watching Renegade, and then it's nothing but T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith sacks. And I look down to see them lined up and ready to go, and I see, Watt and Highsmith on the sideline. What are you doing? All right, we got to get out of here, Mike. We got to roll. So let's give our predictions here.
Well, if you've been following the show, you know at this point that I have picked the Steelers to lose, I think 6 weeks in a row or so, and been wrong most of that time. So Houston 21, Steelers 20. Take it for what it's worth. But my props have been generally good. I think I missed last week. Thought Aaron might throw 2 TDs, did not. But he's got to throw for over 207 to beat 220. And he's got to beat 220, I think, for the Texans to go down. So I'm going to go over 207 on passing yards for Aaron Rodgers.
I got Houston 23-20 in overtime. I'm putting the overtime out there just because I'll be on deadline and they'll screw me. I got Steelers under 7.5 in the first quarter at -23. I think that's like stealing money against this defense with their first quarter scoring woes. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Go for a 2-point conversion in the first quarter? No. So that feels like free money to me. Steelers under 7.5 in the first quarter. Mike, you got to roll. I got to roll. Thanks to everybody who is watching. We will be back next week one way or other to either wrap it up or look ahead to the divisional round. Go to Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore before the game on Monday Night Football. Meet me at Mike's.